episode number 13, with record-setting solo sailor Rich Wilson. Welcome to The Art of Excellence, a show about people doing extraordinary things in their lives. I'm your host, Glenn Zweig. Thanks for joining me. My guest today is Rich Wilson. Rich is the fastest American skipper to race solo around the world. He completed the Vendee Globe 27,000-mile solo round-the-world yacht race this year in 107 days. At 66 years old, he was also the oldest skipper in the race. He has degrees in mathematics and an MBA, both from Harvard, and currently resides in Boston. Rich, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Glenn. Nice to be here with you.
How far back does this passion for sailing go? When did you first fall in love with it?
I grew up sailing with my parents. My father started sailing in probably his mid-40s here in the Boston area, north of Boston. And I just thought it was an exciting sport. It was fun to be out on the water. It was an adventure. You're away from land and the normal sort of support services of land. And the sailing in the beginning was in small boats, some races as I got up into my teenage years, and then slowly started to do some more offshore, longer races, overnight races, and it's just so interesting. It's a complicated sport, I guess, but that makes it interesting. And as well, I've had asthma, severe asthma, since I was a one-year-old kid, and back in the early days, up until I was probably a late teenager, there were no asthma medications for home use. And so you just had to sort of suffer through it or persevere through it, probably a better way to put it. And being off of land, where I'm allergic to just about everything, my asthma was relieved to some degree. So I think that played a good role in it as well.
Is there a point when you look back at your life where the passion started to maybe turn more into an obsession?
Oh, I don't think it's an obsession. I just think it's something I really like to do. And we found a very good use for it as well. So it wasn't just a sport for me when we started to do our SitesAlive school programs. Then it became really what I think is the best tool for being able to excite young people about learning. And that's what we've done for the last now 27 years.
So many people listening to this episode have probably never sailed. And most of those who have sailed have probably not been out to sea longer than a few hours, maybe a day or two tops. The idea of being out to sea and all by yourself for 3.5 months is unfathomable to most people. So describe what it's like.
Good question. Well, it's beautiful. It's exciting, challenging, can be very scary at times. And the physical effort involved, certainly in this particular event, is beyond description. I think the complexity of the boats is interesting from engineering, scientific viewpoints. You know, some people say, don't you get bored at sea, or isn't it boring? And the response of all the solo skippers will be, we would wish to have 20 minutes of boredom in the middle of this. There's just always something going on. The landscape, the seascape is always changing. At night, you see stars that you won't see from land because of light pollution generally around the cities. Certainly go into the southern hemisphere, we see a whole new set of stars and constellations. You see different animals. You see the albatross in the south and whales in the south sometimes, flying fish going across the tropics, It just absolutely is changing all the time, and particularly since it's a race, you're just not going along with one set of sails that are comfortable. You're always trying to go faster, and so that means that even on the nice days, where for here in Marblehead, a nice Saturday afternoon sail, you'd be forced to put up your bigger sails, and so that's always a big effort to try to go faster. So you're always trying to go faster, and that's just a big effort. Sails are big, boats are big, powerful. Forces, the loads on the boats are just incredible. The speeds that can be attained are incredible, and one might note, given that the America's Cup has just finished, that the speeds attained with these monohulls alone are at sea in big waves and very, very, very far from land. So not in the protected laboratory of Hamilton Sound in Bermuda. But it's a great sport, and I think it's challenging both physically and intellectually as well, and certainly emotionally, because of the fear that can come along when you're alone in a big storm and 1,000 miles from land.
I want to elaborate here on this alone part, the isolation, the loneliness of being out there. They say solitary confinement can drive prisoners mad. Some psychologists actually equate the lack of social contact to torture. So when you're out at sea for months at a time, do you start to go stir crazy, or do you somehow find it liberating?
I think that we're at the opposite end of the spectrum of solitary confinement. That's certainly a primary difference there is simply that that's unwilling, and we are willing. We are going off to do this because we want to do this. But if you have a 360 degree by 180 degree over your head view of the sky, you see more of the sky than you will pretty much anywhere on land, except for if you're at a mountaintop. And it's always changing. You're moving through the seascape. The waves are always changing around you, and always changing. And the weather is changing. So I don't think it's solitary confinement at all. I think it's incredibly liberating.
But it's the lack of social contact, which I guess is the parallel there. I understand that the visual is very different, but the fact that you have no one there by your side for months at a time. I mean, I'm sure you can talk to other folks on the radio, but talking on a phone and being there in person are two very different things.
I guess the solo sailors would probably say that it's fine for there not to be people there. I differentiate between being sort of solitary and alone when things might go wrong with the boat and there's nobody there to help, and sort of solitude, the loneliness aspect of that. I generally have never gotten lonely at sea, and certainly over the course of time, the technology has permitted email and certainly voice communications through satellite links. We have 3 satellite telephones right at the chart table ready to go, 3 different systems. So I can talk to anybody anytime. In fact, we found that the best audio connections we could make were not actually through the analog telephone aspect of it, but through Skype audio or Skype video through our data plan on the satellites. That was the highest quality audio. So you can sit there and talk to whoever you want to and see them through the Skype video from far at sea. Yes, you'd like to have people right there, but it's not a debilitating lack, that's for sure.
So when you sail a solo around-the-world race like this, I'm guessing success is part technical, part physical, part mental, and perhaps even part luck. So which of those would you say is the most important?
I think that probably each of those needs 100% success in some way. It's you have to have a great team. The boat has to be impeccably prepared. Michel Desjoyeaux, who is the only 2-time winner of the Vendee Globe, used to say that the 80% of his wins were completed before the start of the race with the boat preparation. Then luck, of course, plays plays a role. Nowadays, luck is so much in whether or not you happen to hit anything in the water while you're going fast. And that's obviously something you just pure chance whether that's going to happen. For the boat, the physical part of the boat, just to have the boat be in as great shape as possible, needs a dedicated team. And we had that. We had a team both in England and in the U.S. For refitting the boat, and they did an extraordinary job. And the way that works, I think, is you find people who are expert in the different areas, the rigging, the electronics, the construction of the boat, the systems of the boat. You find people who are much smarter than you are, and you have your questions, you ask your questions, and you listen to their answers and implement their answers. And then you have all of their telephone numbers. So when you're at sea, if you need to call them, you can call them and have them help walk you through a repair or a solution.
So the boat's got to be in great shape, but I'm guessing you, the skipper, also have to be in great shape. I mean, this is a very physically demanding sport, especially the length of time you're out there. So talk about what sort of training did you have to do personally to get ready for this?
Yeah, so I've always been in pretty good shape through my life, played a lot of different sports, and I think part of that's because of the asthma. My lungs work at about 70% of normal for my age and height, and so I guess one way to think about that is for somebody else's 2 breaths, I have to take 3 breaths. So I've got to be pretty fit anyway, just to get through life with that. I trained with a trainer here in Marblehead, fortunately found quite locally here, Marty Shea, who was an All-American distance runner at Boston University, where she became a cyclist. She said when I met her, just tell me tell me the motions that you need to do on the boat, what it's going to be like. When we had the boat here, she came out to see the boat so she could understand. And then she was very rigorous. She was quite direct about it. She said in the early going, I'm going to work you really hard because if something happens and you don't come home, I don't want to ever think that it was because you weren't good enough physical shape. I don't want it on my conscience.
So how long was she working with you on that?
For the first race we did in 2008, 2009, it was about a year, maybe a little over a year. Same for the second race, about a year and a half probably. And she would work me really hard, but that's okay. I said, I'll do whatever you ask me to do because I want to come home too.
So how are you able to sleep when you're on these trips? I'm guessing you're somewhat sleep deprived the entire time, and that fatigue factor must have had a whole other element to this.
Yes, it does. That's for sure. The boats have autopilot, so they're able to steer without you having to actually be in the cockpit and hand steer the boat. So hopefully those systems are working well. We had a complete backup autopilot system on the boat. And I also had a very sensitive, accurate sleep monitoring watch. I was logging actually more. It was telling me I was getting about 5 hours out of 24 of sleep, which was a little higher than I had anticipated. 3 of those 5 hours were composed of naps that were shorter than 45 minutes each. The 5 hours isn't really quite enough anyway, particularly given the effort, the physical effort. The 3 hours of naps shorter than 45 minutes is really the crux of the problem. You're getting 20 minutes here, 30 minutes there, 10 minutes, 40 minutes.
It seems like you almost have to train yourself to adjust to a different type of sleep cycle because you can't do 45-minute naps and add them up, and that counts the equivalent of having slept, 5 or 6 hours.
Well, I guess I'd leave some of the analysis to the sleep specialists, but that's what one has to do, and that's what the sailors do.
And it works for you.
Well, I'm not sure it works perfectly for me. I'm pretty tired a lot of the time, but it was sustainable, and I was able to get through the 107 days. The first time we did this was 121 days.
Are you taking a lot of caffeine in between the naps, or are you taking other stimulants?
No caffeine at all. No coffee, no tea, no chocolate. Because when you have the opportunity to sleep, you want to be able to sleep right then and there. And you don't want to have anything in your system that might dampen that. And there may be 24 hours, there might be 36-hour periods where the sleep watch has recorded 0 sleep. if something's going on. If there's a problem with the boat, with storms, you might have to go that long without any sleep at all. And I guess it's probably useful to also comment on the physical effort, which is probably best defined by the target caloric intake of 6,000 calories a day. I was getting to probably 5,500 calories a day for the course of the whole race, and it's just hard to sustain that physical effort. What happens with your body, with the motions that you're doing on the boat, is that your legs kind of atrophy through the course of the race because they're just bracing you all the time. You're not cycling or running, doing anything like that. So the legs have to be super strong at the start so that they can degrade over the course of time, and you'll have something left at the end. Whereas your upper body gets stronger and stronger and stronger. However strong you are at the beginning, you get stronger and stronger and stronger. And that's because you're grinding the winches, the pedestal winch, the other winches, pulling ropes, bustling sails around, and you get stronger and stronger and stronger that way through the course of the race.
And it's not the gym where you can take a day off and recover. I mean, there's no recovery. There's day in, day out for 3 months.
That's exactly right. That's the issue. I try to imagine, how do you describe what it was like? And I started to think when we got around Cape Horn and coming back up the Atlantic, should I give talks about this time, and how would you possibly describe what kind of an effort is going on there? And it's pretty hard to describe. If you go into the gym for an hour, 2 hours, you have some huge workout that's 3 hours long. Then yes, you go home and you take a shower and you have a nice sleep and you have a nice dinner, and maybe 24 hours later you go back to the gym. But that's not what happens on this boat. Like, you do the 2 hour effort, and some of the sail changes on board will take over an hour straight through, hard as you can go. But then you might have to do it again 3 hours later, and you might have to do it again 3 hours after that, and 3 hours after that. And that's the thing, that it's just the sustained effort is just not describable. But somehow you keep doing it because sometimes you have to. If you have too much sail up and a storm comes through, you have to get that sail down, or you might destroy the boat. And if you destroy the boat, you're an awfully long way from help. So it's a save yourself kind of a situation. Save the boat, save yourself. But if the winds lighten up and you can put up more sail, you have to do that too, because your competitors are doing that, and you don't want them to sail away from you. It's a pretty full-on effort by everybody.
You're exposing yourself to incredible risks out there. You got the severe wind and wave conditions, the remoteness of the course, as you pointed out, the sheer duration of the race. There's very little margin for error, and you could literally die out there. In fact, I believe, if I read correctly, one of the racers back in the 90s was lost out at sea and never found. So do you factor in those risks and accept death as a potential consequence?
I don't think people are going out. I don't think any of these sailors are going out there. This is not the Red Bull Vendee Globe. These are accomplished, thoughtful, well-prepared sailors, and nobody's going out there to invite undue risk. I can absolutely guarantee that. And I think most of the sailors are, in a way, incrementalists, as I am. They've done a lot of sailing. The requirements to enter the race are strict. You have to finish a solo transatlantic race in your boat to qualify for the Vendee Globe, as well as a whole slew of other safety features. That's a solo transatlantic race is a race that's really beyond the ken of most sailors anywhere. So that's just a qualifier. So the group, when they get to the starting line, they're pretty qualified to do this.
Sue, are you ever afraid? You're out there all alone. You're sleep deprived. You're trying desperately to control your boat. In the middle of the night, gargantuan waves crashing down upon you. I mean, does fear ever enter the equation for you?
Oh, sure. Absolutely. I think fear is one of the things that keeps one safe, because then you're paying attention to everything, all the details. the smallest thing that you see. Things have a way of sort of cascading. If A breaks, then B might break, then that breaks C, then D breaks, then E breaks. And so you have to make sure that A doesn't break. So you're really paying attention to the boat all the time, and you're paying attention to yourself too. In the 2008 race, on the first weekend, we had a big storm in the Bay of Biscay that broke 4 boats that had to abandon the race that first weekend, and then 5 other boats having to go back for repairs. And in the middle of that storm, I got thrown across the cabin and ended up breaking 2 ribs. And later on, sort of fell asleep at the chart table and tipped over and fell directly on top of my head and scrunched all the vertebrae in my neck. And so, something like that happens, and then suddenly everything else might go wrong because you might not be quite strong enough, or you might be reluctant to do something because your ribs hurt so much. And so you really have to be careful you have to be so careful about doing things methodically, thoughtfully, think through every step. If there are complex maneuvers with the boat, I will talk out loud the steps to myself to try to prevent myself from making a mistake. And even that doesn't always work. So the boat was strong enough to forgive my mistakes. So that was a good thing.
Well, you had a pretty close call back in 1990 when your boat capsized when you were attempting to break the San Francisco to Boston sailing record. What happened?
That was the worst I've ever seen. That was probably the worst almost anybody's ever seen. So there were 2 of us on board a 60-foot trimaran. Steve Pettengill was my shipmate, and we were headed down through the Pacific. And as we were approaching Cape Horn, we got into a storm of truly epic proportions. For the last 2,000 miles, we were about 2,000 miles from Cape Horn when we got into the storm. And on a Monday morning, we had to take down all the sails. So we had big seas. The boat was surging up to, I think we had a surge to 19 knots on one with no sails up. And we started dragging lines over the side of the boat to slow the boat down. And over the course of the next couple of days, it kept getting worse and worse and worse till Thursday morning, which was Thanksgiving Day, 1990. We had 85 knots of wind, and our estimate was 55-foot seas from the trough to the crest, and they were cresting. We were 400 miles west of Cape Horn, and we finally got sideways on a wave, and the boat was turned upside down. The water temperature was 41 degrees Fahrenheit. We had about knee-deep water on the ceiling. We got into survival suits, and then about an hour and a half later, a wave came along that must have been bigger than all the rest. So we're pretty sure the mast was still intact and the boat was upside down, and just picked that boat up and threw it. I got knocked out against the floor of the boat, which was over my head at that time. And when I came to, I was underwater and was able to get to the surface inside the boat. So it was just like you see in the movies, about 6 or 12 inches of air before you got to the ceiling that was now back over our heads. My shipmate Steve was in a different part of the boat. You could hear him yelling for me, and we both got out into the cockpit. The cockpit was awash, the boat was awash, the mast was gone, and we were able to move life raft and EPIRB up to the sail locker up forward, pump that out, and there was a bulkhead up there that kept the main cabin away from the sail locker. The main cabin was full of water up over your shoulders, and so 17 hours later, the New Zealand Pacific, largest refrigerated container ship in the world, and the last ship that was on the route from Australia, New Zealand, around Cape Horn, going up to Europe, the longest trade route in the world, was able to find us. And then they pulled the most masterful piece of seamanship imaginable to be able to put that ship alongside us. The ship was rolling, it was 815 feet long, rolling through 60-degree arc itself alongside us at 2:30 in the morning, pitch black at the middle of the night. The sea is still running about 45 feet or so, and put that ship right alongside us. So we had a chance to jump to rope ladder hanging down from the pilot door and get up into the ship. We lost the boat, and let it go. There's nothing to do.
But hang on. I mean, I'm listening to this story, and it sounds to me like you had two strokes of incredible luck during this incident. First, the boat was turned upside down and got re-righted by a wave. I'm not a sailor, but I assume that doesn't happen all that often. And then the next stroke of luck, not only does this ship find you in the middle of the night, which I have to imagine that's not an easy thing to do, but then they're able to maneuver and get you up in the ship unscathed. So have you ever pondered why the two of you didn't perish that day? I mean, is it some sort of divine intervention? Or do you have any theories on this?
No, I don't subscribe to that theory. I subscribe to the theory that the boat was incredibly strong. We prepared it well, but the designer and engineers and builders of that boat made it an incredibly strong boat that did not break up in either of those capsizes. The rewriting of the boat was a first in maritime history, as far as anybody's been able to find. And the skill level of the crew aboard New Zealand Pacific was extraordinary for them to pull that off. It turned out that the captain had special licenses for ports around the world where he could bring that huge ship into port without tugboats because he was so good. So now, if there was the best stroke of luck in all of this was that that ship found us with that crew on board.
Rich, I think I started out with your introduction stating that you've got a mathematics degree from Harvard. So what would you suggest is the probability of your boat being re-righted by a wave given that situation it was in?
Oh, whoa.
Right. And that's what I'm getting at. It's almost impossible to conceive, and it happened.
Yeah.
I mean, who knows what would have happened had that not happened? You might not be doing this interview right now.
Well, yes, possibly. I mean, we actually thought that we were worse off when the boat was upright, because when the boat was upside down, we had knee-deep water in the cabin. When the boat was right side up, we had shoulder-deep water in the cabin. And so it limited our options by the structure of the boat, how the buoyancy of the boat floated higher when it was upside down. And we had more sort of breathing room inside the boat, but it would have been harder to have gotten out, for sure.
When you go through a near-death experience like that, it clearly didn't deter you from the water. It didn't even deter you from doing this race again. So does it change you in any way, either on the water or off the water, when you go through that?
It was the closest call I've ever had, for sure. I think we did a lot of things right, and our preparation had been good, and in the moment at sea, we did a lot of things right. We were inventive in how we solved problems, how we managed the boat. I think we did a really good job of that. So we thought this was in a sense, fluke isn't really the right word, but it's a low probability storm. Nowadays, for sure, the weather forecasting capacity of satellite systems is far superior to what we had back then. Technology has advanced so much, that's just a huge help for the mariners at sea.
But coming face to face with your own mortality like that, it doesn't sort of change your psyche in any way. You just sort of go through post-mortem and we did everything we had to do and just place faith that it was a fluke and won't happen again.
You're super scared, and you've certainly never been in this situation before. At the same time, what you're trying to do is have most of your channels of brain function be working on how do we make this better? We have to get out of the water because it's cold and we're going to get hypothermic. So we got the survival suits. We got to pump out the sail locker. So we got to do that. We got to get some food in. We got to do that. We got to make sure that the EPIRB's working. We got to do that. We got to get the Argos working, which is another satellite emergency connection. Got to do that. So you're not, hopefully not just sitting there saying, woe is me. Maybe one channel of your brain is saying, woe is me, but the other 93 channels are trying to make it better somehow.
And do you practice all of those emergency procedures so it's just very instinctual when it happens like that? You just sort of know the steps you got to go through?
Well, no, because I think that every difficult situation at sea is going to be different, probably, and you're not going to be able to imagine them all. Some of the solutions that guys made in this latest Vendee Globe were incredible. Friend Alan Rory, a young Swiss guy, he broke a rudder in the middle of the Indian Ocean, and he had to replace the rudder. I mean, we practiced that at the dock for our boat, and took about 5 hours tied up to a dock in a marina where it was calm. He's out in the middle of the Indian Ocean and I don't know, 10, 12, 15-foot seas and blowing 40 or 50 knots. And he has to come up with a solution for that. So, I mean, he can't practice that. You can't even imagine really what the solution would be. It has to be on the spot. You have to be creative and problem solving. And he did it.
They call this Vendee Globe the Mount Everest of the seas. Last time I checked, though, thousands of people have successfully scaled Mount Everest, and I believe fewer than 100 have ever completed the Vendee. Perhaps if you climb Mount Everest solo, without a guide, without Sherpas, without supplemental oxygen, maybe you'd have something comparable. So why you? Why do you suspect you're in this very small elite group of world-class sailors?
Well, I don't really know why I am in that small group. Other than we've tackled it and we've succeeded, and with the help of an awful lot of people. If one looks at it just from the sailing side, it's a challenge to oneself. Can you be strong enough, smart enough, brave enough to pull off something like this? I mean, I do remember when I was a kid, I read the books of Slocum and then Bernard Moitessier, the great French sailor, and Sir Robin Knox Johnston, great English sailor, Francis Chichester, English sailor again, and who had all sailed solo around the world. And I wondered when I was a kid, could I ever do anything like that? And as I said earlier, I'm an incrementalist. And so my imagination was, could I ever do a one night, overnight alone? Or 2 nights overnight alone. And then there were circumstances that led me to try to do the solo transatlantic race. That was going to be the gigantic adventure of my life. I just kept sort of upping the ante a little bit, and we end up with the Vendee Globe, well down the pathway. And I think also for me personally, probably the asthma has a big effect in that ever since I was a kid, I had to persevere, I think, beyond other kids that didn't have asthma, because particularly when there weren't any asthma medications. I played a lot of soccer and I played football and other sports, basketball, hockey. I mean, I'm out of breath before everybody else is out of breath, but you have to keep going. So you learn perseverance, you learn to endure. Probably my pain threshold for being out of breath is a lot higher than other people's, but I'm always trying to prove that to myself. Could I do something like this? And I think that's a big part of the motivation.
Well, you've certainly proven it, that's for sure.
I guess it was good to finish the second Vendee Globe because it didn't look like the first one might have been a fluke.
Right. One wasn't enough. We got to confirm it. Let's talk about SitesAlive. You had this daily educational program while you were doing the race. I believe delivered to over 750,000 students and then millions of additional readers in over 55 countries around the world. So talk about the curriculum. I know you used to be a teacher yourself. What were they learning?
I should explain a little bit about the background there. I guess I was a teacher in the Boston Public Schools back the first year of busing in Boston. It was a pretty chaotic year, but it was a spectacular year nonetheless. And one of the things I learned just on the academic side was that if I brought real world problem sets into my math classes, I was teaching 9th and 10th grades, then the kids paid more attention because it had some level of relevance to their lives. And so as many years later, I was exposed to real world experiential learning through being a trustee on the boards of both Sea Education Association down Woods Hole and the School for Field Studies as well, which were both college level science programs that were in the field. If you want to learn rainforest science, You can sit in the four walls of a classroom or read a textbook, or you can go to the rainforest and study it in situ. And which is going to be better? It's obviously the latter is going to be better. I was more interested in K-12, and so we couldn't send sixth graders to the rainforest, or we couldn't send the sixth graders to sea. So, but we can through modern technology, satellite communications, and the internet as it's developed. We can bring those adventures in close to real time, surrounded by a solid curriculum into classrooms. And that was the idea. And it would help to solve one of the big problems teachers have, which is how do you get the kids to pay attention? Because they don't really want to be there. Most of them don't want to be there. They're bored by textbooks. They don't want to be inside. And so if you can excite them with a live letter rip adventure that hooks them, then the science, the geography, the mathematics, it all flows much more freely. And they can see reason for it. They can see the subject being used in the real world. You know, the curriculum that was written by teachers for the Vendee Globe, it would be 15 weeks of activities, or STEM activities, geography activities, other kinds of activities as well. It would be Q&A. Students could send questions in to the boat, and as well to a team of experts that we had. That was really a good idea. That was a very cool thing where we had the ship captain who rescued us off Cape Horn. We had my asthma doctor. We had my emergency doctor. We had best-selling author of Longitude, Eva Sobel. We had the vice president of research at MIT. We had a climate specialist, a fisheries specialist from National Marine Fisheries Service. We had a maritime arts curator from Peabody Essex Museum. We had 15 experts who were writing for the school program and answering kids' questions. So a kid, if they're interested in medicine, they could send Dr. Barney Walth a question. If they were interested in art, they could send Dan Finnemore a question. If they were interested in writing, they could send David Sobel a question. It was a completely unique experience, and all around the hook of this big adventure that's unveiling itself 24 hours a day for me, 107 days.
But given that what you just said, that this hook is this great adventure, beyond the core curriculum, was there also an underlying message about chasing your dreams and following your passion that you were hoping to convey through this?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. The perseverance, the determination, problem solving, all those kinds of things that are sometimes taught in character training in schools obviously come out in something like the Vendee Globe, where people are pressed absolutely to their limit. And it's also useful to say, yeah, I'm scared out here. Because you know that the kids get scared from time to time, don't have a lot of confidence from time to time. And so maybe it's good for them to see somebody else who's who's an adult, who is in the middle of that sort of same situation with, being scared and having some doubt about how it's all going to turn out. So all of that is part of it. And I know for me that when things get really hard at sea, when I get just so tired you can't even keep your eyes open, and something happens on deck, I know I have the kids to write for. I know I have to answer questions for them. I know that's the motivation, is that I can make a difference here. I can do that. And that really helps to bring me home.
Well, you're an extremely driven person. You didn't just go to a local community college, you go to Harvard, and you go to Harvard twice. And you didn't just sail from Nantucket, maybe down the coast, but you sail around the world. And you didn't aspire to just teach maybe a classroom or two of kids, but to reach out to hundreds of thousands of students around the world. It's all incredibly impressive. Where does the drive come from? Is it just something internal? Was it something you learned from your folks growing up or people around you?
Hard to say, I guess. I'd add the year that I did have a master's degree from MIT in there too, and that was worth a lot because there's an awful lot of problem solving that goes on in the culture of MIT. I had an advisor at MIT who said one time, "You have to stretch your brain," and I thought that was a great thing for all of life. Stretch your mind, and it was a great challenge for something like the Vendee Globe. I don't know. As I said, I was an incrementalist. I just kept going up the ladder of voyages, and was lucky, very lucky to be able to do these, I think. And the idea for Sites Alive, I think, that's my creative legacy, if I have a creative legacy.
So knowing everything you know today, if you could go back in time, give the young, freshly minted Harvard and MIT graduates some sage advice, what would you say?
Many people will have dreams of what you should do, but don't find what you dream to do and go do that one. And it may take time, and it took time for me to be able to find this combination of ideas and things I like to do and that I thought were important to sort of bring out maybe the best in me.
That's good advice. My show is called The Art of Excellence. Honestly, I'm still learning what excellence means to me. What's your definition of it?
Oh, that's a good question. Maybe it's just doing your best, knowing that you put out best effort that you could have on whatever axes are part of the equation, and to try to always make the measurements on those axes a little bit better.
The mathematics professor coming out there with the axes. I like it. That's a good answer. Rich, we're going to end on that note. I can't thank you enough for doing this. I was completely just loving every minute of every detail of this story. I think what you've done, not just on the sailing front, but on the educational front, both of them to be admired. And this has been a real pleasure having this chance to spend some time with you.
Great. Well, thanks. I enjoyed the conversation as well, Glenn. So thanks to you.
Hey, thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did. You can subscribe to the show at iTunes, Stitcher, and theartofexcellence.com. I've got one small favor to ask. If you like the show, please take a minute and leave us a review on iTunes. I would really appreciate that. I'll see you next time.